everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
It's your favorite host of your favorite podcast, the Dexterous Lifestyle Podcast, Kellie and Andrea. And today we have our guest, Lindsay Warnes. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I am one half of Willow Legal Group, and we are an estate planning firm in Maryland. And what we really like to do is educate our clients on not only the importance of having an estate plan, but just what each aspect of that estate plan is, and then how it actually works, so that they know after they've put this big pieces, all these pieces of paper together, what it actually does. And we really like to work with busy couples that have minor children and just help them get everything organized and planned out, so that if something happens, everything's already been taken care of, and it's a much more seamless transition to life, either without one of them or both of them, or if somebody's seriously injured or hospitalized, so that it's a lot easier on the family to deal with, rather than if you haven't done any of this planning and it's sheer chaos.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I'm sure who you mentioned are listening right now and they needed to hear that. You actually helped change my life in a little bit. I'm going to tell you how.
In a world filled with chaos, we try our best to create a balanced lifestyle. We love to be productive, but we also love to rest. We love to be efficient, but not at the cost of our peace. There is a direct correlation between our habits and our happiness.
The Dexterous lifestyle is meant for those of us who live hectic lives, but with the right tools, information, and resources, we can strive for order, peace, health, wealth, and calm. It's not too much to ask. We deserve a dexterous mind, a dexterous body, and plenty of dexterous spaces to support our dexterous lifestyle. We are hopeful that our conversation with Lindsay today will help change your life for the better, because your newsletter actually pushed me in a very positive direction recently.
Oh, really?
Yes. I will tell you about the newsletter where you talked about how a gentleman came to you and Megan to have power of attorney for his aging mother. Mm-hmm. He was, planning this ahead of time, but then life started lifing. He let things kind of slip by the wayside, but then mom took a fall, and at the hospital, they handed him papers that he had seen before. And where had he seen them? From you. That he could have filled out prior to this emergency. And one of the things that resonated with me was that could happen to anybody. We can anytime get in an accident, we could fall. And at any time we might need someone to pay our bills or help run our business, or, and when we're incapacitated, we need that power of attorney, how important it is. So you mentioned in the newsletter how we can even put something in place immediately, going to, even a canned document that we can, it's not necessarily the highest standard of something, of a document like that, but at least it is something that is in place that can be of protection. Mm-hmm. So, that's just I love that story, a snippet of. And so what I did, I was like, you know what? I had a document that I had to fill out not too long ago, and I was paying for a Rocket Lawyer. Mm-hmm. And so I went on there and I was like, you know what? It wasn't even my plan for today, but I went in there and I have and that's right here. I did my last will and testament. Mm-hmm. I did my power of attorney for personal and for business. It's all sitting in my inbox. And so now this is one step closer than I was before. And I'm hoping that going into 2023 with that notarized and documented and everyone that's named in it have a copy. And I just feel so powerful. So thank you for that information. It really, that newsletter helped put one of your readers in a better position.
Yes. No, that's great. And we do actually see that a lot, where I think people think they have more time. And the problem is they'll get to it later. And this gentleman and his mom had met with us, and we said, these are the things that need to happen. And he was concerned about her health, and they never reached out again for another appointment. And then by that time, the doctor had actually handed him these papers and said, unfortunately, she's debilitated to the point where she cannot make her own decisions, and you have to go through the court to seek guardianship. And as you can imagine, that's a much more difficult process than had they just scheduled an appointment with us and done it while she still had the mental capacity to do so. And, we see that a lot. And we see people who, I'm going to get to that. And then they have a heart attack or something happens, and it just doesn't get done. And that doesn't do anybody any favors.
Absolutely. I mean, you're already going through an emergency, a tragedy, a hard time, and to have to then deal with courts and things on top of that, with emotional, distress on top of it. Oh my gosh. So, that's one of the things our listeners, and I know your a target audience, are a lot of times in transition. And they already lead busy lives. So it's really, a gift to have this done ahead of time for our family and for ourselves. So I thank you for, again, that what you do, first of all, and then, being proactive in telling other stories so that we can get our butts in motion. So we already mentioned before, life is already chaotic. We don't need to add to the chaos.
Correct. And we see it all the time. But I think one of the things there with that is also people they think of estate planning as for when they die. But that story, and then what you were just talking about, is the incapacity planning. And a lot of people don't think about that. And what happens if you COVID was a really big eye-opener for a lot of people, because it put a lot of people in the hospital for a good amount of time. And if you don't have anything in place, something as simple as, well, who's going to pay my bills? Who's going to care for my kids? Who's going to, do X, Y, and Z while I'm laid up in the hospital? Maybe I can communicate, maybe I can't. And those are the things I don't think people really think about when it comes to estate planning. So we try to paint that whole picture for people. It's not just when you die. It's also for when you're alive, but you need help. So education is really big for us, because there's also a lot of misinformation out there, I think. And once people kind of understand how it really works, then they're like, oh, wow, I really do need to do this. Even if for young people too, that's one of my targets, is the younger crowd in their 30s, because again, estate planning, that's for old people. And it's not the case for everyone.
Yeah. I can really appreciate what you're saying. Unfortunately, I've had some of these experiences happen in my own family. I lost quite a few relatives during COVID, unfortunately. And one in particular was pretty diligent about planning for her death, but not as diligent about planning for being incapacitated or not able to make decisions on her own. And unfortunately, many of the plans that she had set for her death were reversed. during this period of time that she was not able to make the decisions on her own, and there was no clear direction about who was to make decisions for her. So it was a compounding of an already heart-wrenching situation.
Right.
So what you do is just so important and really speaks to the need to deal with difficult things before they become more difficult, because it's not ever going to become easier. So you can make it and deal with the difficult thing now in order to make it a bit easier in the future. Never going to be easy, but easier, because that compounded complexity is really, really such a heavy burden during a time that's sad and stressful anyway.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then when you have to involve the court, which most people are not, I mean, they're not familiar with the court process.
Yeah.
It's stressful, it's confusing, it's very long. Probate is a very, and here in Maryland, at least, it's a minimum of 12 months for a very, quote, simple estate.
Wow.
And that's just the nature of the proceeding. And I do handle probates for people, and even I get confused. So I can't imagine somebody who doesn't have my background.
Yeah.
So it's totally avoidable. It's all totally avoidable if you just put in a little time and investment up front to spare your family all of that down the road.
Can you speak to what the process looks like? If, say for instance, something happens to me and now my husband has this document, the process he now has to do versus the process of probate.
So a will, this is one of those, I think, common myths. A will still goes through probate. So if you have anything that's solely in your name, so like your business, unless he's a joint business owner, or any accounts or anything just in your name alone, will have to go through the probate process. And if your husband is named as your executor, he will be the one that oversees that process by filing your will with the court. And then he's the one that, makes sure that everything gets paid and everything gets distributed according to your will. And the court oversees that. And then they have rules and things. But a lot of people think that if you have a will, then you don't have to go through probate. And that's not true. Wills absolutely 100% have to go to probate. The only way to avoid probate is if you have, there's 3 ways for the most part. If everything you own is jointly titled, properly jointly titled, there's several ways to jointly own something, but if you're jointly titled the right way, the survivor will get it automatically without court. If you have a pay on death, so like a bank pay on death beneficiary on an account, or your life insurance that has a beneficiary, retirement accounts, anything with a beneficiary will be settled outside of the probate court unless you name a minor who cannot inherit legally, or if you don't name anybody, or the person you have named is deceased or whatever, then it would go to your probate. And then the third way, which is becoming really, really popular, is a revocable living trust. And that's where you retitle your assets into your trust name. You retain full ownership and, sort of ownership, but control of everything in the trust, but it removes it from your probate estate so that when you die, you don't have anything that needs to go through probate, and you can settle your affairs on your own timeline, your family's timeline, and you generally would need to hire a lawyer to help you, but it's in a lawyer's office. It's not in the court. And so there's a lot of flexibility with that. It's private. Probate is a public record event, so you can look up anybody's will, and trusts do not get filed with the court. So it's very private. A lot of people really want to maintain their privacy. And so they've become really popular for a lot of reasons. And we do a lot of trusts for couples because of that, but also because they're super, super flexible. You can do so much with a trust. And you can do some stuff with a will as well, but it's all being overseen by the court. So a little different.
Well, I've just been educated.
Well, good.
I'm happy that I have, well, it's in the works, this last will and testament, because at least it's something, right?
Something. Yes, it's something.
But so if this last will and testament goes through probate, it makes it easier then, at least?
It's easier in the sense that you've already decided who gets what and who's going to be in charge. And if you have kids, I actually don't know if you have minor children, but you would also name the guardians in there. So that's already done. If you don't have a will, you're still in probate, but you've not made any choices, and the judge gets to make those choices based on who steps forward.
Oh, so there we have.
That's the difference.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The choices are being engaged versus some stranger that doesn't know me or my family.
Yes. And that's exactly what I tell people. A judge is a stranger who's doing the best he or she can based on what's in front of them. And they don't, anybody can petition the court to be an executor. Anybody can petition the court to be the guardian of your children. And then the judge has to look at, okay, who has shown up and who's the best choice. And that might not be who you would have chosen.
Yes, because anybody can come with their tissue. I love them so much. They would want me to be. Right. I'm pretty sure we've all seen that happen.
Yes. Yeah. Just look at this
person who really should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Lindsay, what made you decide that this was your passion, the thing that you wanted to do?
So I started, it's kind of a strange journey, but I started my legal career doing litigation. I wanted to be a sexy criminal lawyer or a trial attorney. And it took me about 1.5 years to realize I hated it. So I hated it so much that I quit practicing law and I dove into my hobby, which was CrossFit. And I managed a CrossFit gym, eventually owned it with a couple people. And it was great. I liked working with the clients and everything, but I kept thinking, I'm wasting my law degree. I spent a lot of time and money to get that. There's got to be something I can do. One of my gym members, actually, I was talking to him about it, and he said, you need to meet my stepmom. And she's an estate planning attorney here in the area. She's actually my mom's age, so she's been doing it a while. And she said, you need to look into estate planning. And so I eventually took her advice, left the gym a couple years later, and decided I'm going to reopen my firm and I'm going to do this. And then COVID happened. So I was like, oh, cool. But then I was lucky that I found an online coaching program for estate planning lawyers, and they were teaching us how to run a virtual practice. So I joined that, and it's been 3 years now, and I met my partner Megan through that program, and we are just like full steam ahead. And I now have realized how much I actually love helping people and navigate the law and understand the law, and you don't have to go to court to do any of it. It's great. Awesome. So it's, the more I do it, the more I love it. And I'm meeting such wonderful people, and it's making such a difference for people. And I didn't feel that with litigation. So, and I'm a planner anyway. I like planning things, and it's a really natural fit. So I'm so grateful that I was introduced to it.
Awesome.
That is an awesome story.
Yeah.
It brought back to me our previous conversation about how we are so much alike and why we wanted you on the Dexterous Lifestyle Show. Because in your bio, you talk about how you love lifting weights. I love lifting weights. You're, into fitness, and how we have this synergy between our lifestyle, our habits, and what our professions are, and like how we help our clients. And so you also do this with your partner. Can you tell us more about that?
Just how we kind of have like a holistic approach, or?
Yeah.
So Megan, it's funny. Megan, one of the reasons she and I connected initially was she was also a CrossFitter at a different gym. And it turns out we live 10 minutes away from each other. So it was kind of a natural fit. But one of the things that we work really well together is because we think that there needs to be kind of a wellness component to every aspect of your life. So we handle kind of the legal wellness, if you will. And then we have, if you don't have your finances in order, we have referrals for financial advisors or CPAs to get kind of your financial life in order. And then there's the health and fitness aspect and the mental health, life coaches, relationship coaches. And then I met you guys, and I love what you do. And you bring that other like organizational wellness aspect into it. So there's just really, we try to be a resource for all of it, not just here's your will, have a nice day. We want to be there for all of the things and help people really live a fulfilling and, happy, healthy life as much as we can. So
love it.
we
absolutely love it. And, one of the unique things or privileges, I guess we should say, with being professional organizers is we really delve into a lot of the aspects of people's lives. People think, oh, it's about, the stuff and putting it in bins and labeling it. And it is to a degree, but the reason why people have certain things, the reason why people keep certain things, the reason why people use certain things all have to do with them. And the way they think and the habits they have to do with the thoughts that they have. And then they're expressing all of this to us when we're there. And guess what? Now we have a slew of resources, like you mentioned, where you're like, oh, I know Lindsay. You should talk to her. Because, when it's kind of like our lives are like Rubik's cubes, and we're trying to solve so many things at one time. And so we solve one problem, and now, it's like, whoop, there's got to shift this and shift that in order to, solve another thing. And so once we've, uncovered maybe a box of papers and we're going through these papers, it then uncovers another problem that needs to be solved, as far as it could be tax, it could be, estate planning and things like that. And that's probably a lot of the reason why we avoid going through our stuff, because we know that it's going to, have something else out there saying, hello, you need to take care of me too.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about that with Kellie earlier, how I was had the urge to go through my memorabilia, because it's organized. It was a box here labeled memorabilia and a box here labeled memorabilia. And I was like, it would be a great idea if I could just put all that together, not knowing all of the emotional stuff they would bring up as I'm going through all this stuff, like my whole life in 6 boxes. And like my husband's coming downstairs like, are you okay? I'm like, I don't know why this is so hard. So something we think is just gonna be, oh, I'm just gonna go ahead and get this living trust done. No big deal. Well, you might need to also see a therapist, or you might also need to, think about your health, because now you realize that, your family member has heart disease, and it's just one thing after another. So we always need a slew of experts. So I'm so happy that, you recognize that. And I'm just going to give a shout out to women in general. I think that's kind of our nature. It's like, we take the left brain analytical parts of life, and we're like, but how can we really serve you as a whole?
Oh, absolutely. I know, because you just want to help everybody. And I've learned I need to stay in my lane. So I'm just surrounding myself with other experts so that I can do what I do best and guide people to where they might need to go, find some help with other parts.
And that's kind of what we're doing, even with having you here. Lindsay. You know, we recognize as we're working with our clients that there's so many different aspects. You spoke of wellness earlier, and the wellness wheel, even that many are familiar with there being 8 or 9 different components, and wanting to create that calm and ease in each component, whether it be financial or estate planning, or if you will, just the need to plan and organize, because that is what empowers people and helps them to have that state of calm and ease about life, because life is chaotic enough, complex enough. We don't need to help it be more complex and chaotic, but instead try to create and I should say, step into our power where it exists, because many times it exists and we don't recognize that it's there. So we need people like you in our lives to let us know where we can be empowered and where we can control. We can control if we have a car accident, can't control if there's illness that affects us, but we can control how things are handled during that period of time if we make wise decisions ahead of time, and how much, you know, that would allay our fears and help us to be able to kind of move forward in life without fearing that other shoe that's going to drop at some point. So
Yeah.
we thank you and value so much what you do.
Well, thank you. It's good to hear that. I think it's very important, of course, but it's good to know that others, you know, see that value as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, guess what, listeners? Lindsay is offering you a free estate plan review or $200 off a discovery session, which is normally $450. So thank you so much for that, Lindsay. And we're going to put a link to you for you to schedule that discovery session in the show notes. And you'll see now her information if you're watching, scrolling across her email address and her website. And we will also put that in the show notes if you are just happening to be listening and driving and washing dishes. And don't worry, you can get in contact with Lindsay. Are there any parting thoughts for us, Lindsay?
Just to clarify, the estate plan review is for those of you who have an estate plan, or maybe you just did it on Rocket Lawyer and you want us to take a look at it just to see. That's what the free estate plan review would be. And then our discovery session is where we sit down with you if you don't have anything in place, and we put everything. You know, we educate you on what would happen and what you want to happen, and then you either move forward or you don't. So there's no obligation to continue planning with us. So.
Awesome. And so that, and I wanted to kind of go back to like my scenario, because of course I'm thinking about this now that I'm more educated. So the next step for me really should be a living trust.
It depends on your goals. So everything we do is goal-based. So, and it also depends how you have things titled right now. And so that's why I don't just say, oh yes, you should have this. I know nothing about your assets or your goals or your family. So I can't, you know, I couldn't say. I would say the next step for you though is to get those documents signed.
Yes.
And then maybe you and your husband would want to sit down with an estate planning attorney just to review everything and see if it does have the legal effect that you would want. And if it does, then it's fine. But if it doesn't, you make the changes.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
And just to clarify, are you you practice in Maryland? Are there any other states that you're licensed in? Or?
Don't, but I have some fabulous referrals in Virginia.
Okay.
We work with regularly.
Right.
We just don't handle those cases. So I have at least 3 I can give you that I'm confident practice the same way that I do.
Awesome. And I have family that lives in Maryland, so maybe we'll use that discount for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
My parents. So
Mom and Dad. Do they listen to your podcast?
yeah. Absolutely. So thanks again, Lindsay. We look forward to hearing from you again, as we will have hopefully some more collaboration with your wellness group, as well as our Dexterous Lifestyle Inner Circle, you'll get some more powerful but direct community and courses.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Well,
Thank
you're
you,
welcome.
Lindsay.
And we wish everyone to have a wonderful day and a dexterous
Lifestyle.
lifestyle.